Discovering your direction in life is the first key to determining your passion, your purpose, and reason for individual identity. However, in American society today, there is still more work for Americans to do on an individual basis to determine their best act of service. According to the Cato Institute and LinkedIn, approximately 25 to 59% of Americans believe they have a clear sense of purpose, passion, and drive in their own lives. Meanwhile, an additional 57% of Americans admit that they search for the true meaning and passion in their own lives, at least on a monthly basis. For my friend, Luke Mickelson, he grew up as a hard-working farm kid in Kimberly, Idaho, where commitment to passion, purpose, and the commitment to service was just a way of life. And for Mickelson, he says that passion and purpose are the two most important pillars that we can cultivate in our own lives. Because according to this motivational speaker, he believes that passion and purpose help us to define what our identity of impact will truly be. He's a lifelong coach also who's poured his energy and efforts into our young people of the next generation, helping them to form a competitive edge of identity and character, which helps to form the basis of their logical and intellectual reasoning for the rest of their lives. As for his own individual impact, it comes in the form of the charity he started in 2012, entitled Sleep in Heavenly Peace. It's a registered 501c3 charity, which started with one simple but powerful message and mission of no child will sleep on the floor in our communities. What started as a simple act of kindness has grown into a global volunteer movement of ending bedlessness within our communities for our kids. And Mickelson joined me this week to discuss his thoughts on effective leadership, team building, charity work, and acts of community service. I'm Kevin McShann. Let's have this conversation. To welcome you to the program, and I'm super excited to talk to you about passion and purpose today. It's great to see you, and happy Wednesday to you, my friend.
Let's do it.
Absolutely. So, look, before we dive into really the nitty-gritty of our conversation, I'm curious to ask you about your perspective on how equality and inclusion is related to passion and purpose. What are your thoughts there, my friend?
Quality and inclusion, you said?
Yeah, and how it's related to passion and purpose.
Oh, I think passion certainly comes in all sorts of forms, and it's different from each one of us. We all have our different passions. You know, if there's one thing I learned, if you would have told me 15 years ago that I'd be building beds for kids as my legacy, I would have laughed at your face. I had no idea that this was a passion of mine. So sometimes finding passion can be the hardest thing, you know,
Yeah,
and passion, it touches us differently. Here I run a nonprofit that builds beds for kids. You would think that my own, immediate siblings, my own families would be heavily involved. And, a lot of times chapters that have families involved, they are, but mine are not. And that used to kind of bother me a long time ago. But now I understand that it's just because they have a different passion than I do, right? And that's totally fine. In fact, that's good that we all have different passions, which brings us to different purposes of our lives, or else we'd all be chasing the same thing, you know?
yeah, absolutely. And I know for you, Luke, you grew up in a community in Idaho where community and character and the acts of service were sort of pillars of or pillars of growing up, and it's really stuck with you throughout the course of your life, my friend. So I'm curious to ask you, with your athletic background, my friend, as well. I know you played sports. How has your commitment to service sort of evolved over the years, my friend?
Well, you hit the nail on the head. When you're from a small town like I am, you get to know everybody and they know you, and you instantly develop this bond. I mean, there wasn't a person in my high school I didn't know very well. Even when I was a senior, all those freshmen, I knew who they were, they knew who I was, and you develop a care for them, whether you liked them or not. You're just from the same small town, and I think other people miss out on that when they're from large towns. And so that bondness that you create, it just inherently comes with a sense of serving others. You look out for one another. And I look back at my career or my career rather, my time in my small town, in my small school, being the athlete and being the one that shows up on time, shows up on the field and performs, all in the effort of helping one another and doing teamwork together. And that, I'm really grateful for my roots because of that, and my time in sports, because it did emphasize and bring out my joy for working with other people, my reliance on other people. Sleeping on the Peace is no different. We didn't go from my garage in 2012 to being the largest bed building charity in the world because of one guy. It came about because of many, many people, their skills, their passion for what we do as well, all coming together and working as a team to grow something. And that would not have happened had I been someone that didn't enjoy that wanted to do some things on my own and not look to others for help. We wouldn't have got out of my garage.
Yeah. And Luke, I know that you have a natural knack for leadership development. So, what do you think is the key to, organically and effectively leading other people to a common purpose or to a common good, my friend? What are your thoughts on effective leadership development?
Oh, it's a great question. As a leader, there shouldn't be anything that you're not willing to do yourself that you ask others to do, right? There's a lot of great, I mean, being the example, being the hard worker. I think some of the benefits that I have, but look, I'm not the smartest guy in the room, that's for sure. But one of the talents I do have, I think, is trying to find a round peg for a round hole. And then once you find that, allowing that person the ability to do his or her job. I think too often we hire people, whether you're for a charity or a for-profit company, you hire people to do it the way you want to do it. And I mean, there's probably sometimes that's important, but for the most part, you hire people because they have a way of doing it that's going to be successful. And it's going to be successful because they're doing it. It's their idea. They're bought in. And when it comes to a nonprofit, I mean, sometimes only satisfaction and currency that you have to offer these people that are helping you is mere fulfillment and joy from completing the service, and the mission, not a paycheck. And so the best way to have people be involved is giving them an assignment, letting them do it, to the point where they feel like they're a part of it, that they're making a difference in the mission. And too often, I think people, they hire or go out and get help and then end up wanting these people to do it their way when they're missing out on a great opportunity for someone else's perspective and different views on, whatever task you've asked them to do, and let them be successful at it.
Yeah, absolutely. And look, I'm curious to get your definition of competitive tenacity. Tenacity. What do you think it means to have tenacity and competitiveness in life, my friend? What does that mean
It's
to
a great
you?
question. It's great question, because too often competitiveness, and tenacity gets mixed up with cockiness. I mean, I'm from a small town, and I grew up with a God-given talent of understanding how to pick up a ball and throw it in the right direction. I had that ability where others spent a lot of hard time, certainly harder than I had to, on learning those skills and those traits to be able to be successful. Well, it just came natural to me where other things don't. And so when you have that competitiveness, and you have that tenacity of wanting and drive to do better, it's too often gets confused with cockiness. And unfortunately, however you want to look at it, those people that have that passion, and passion brings that out in people. It brings out that competitiveness. And I don't even know if that's the right word, but it brings out that tenacity of wanting to complete, and accomplish something. And when you find your passion, and I teach people and train on helping people find their passion, but that's only half of it. Now you have to have the courage to follow it, and like you mentioned, the tenacity to go after it, because finding your passion is one thing, but doing it and completing it, that's a whole nother ball of wax. That's oftentimes, and it should be, a hard thing to do, because when you accomplish hard things in your life, right, you feel a greater sense of accomplishment. It's like waking up in the morning to go do a workout, right? Like this morning, I went and walked a couple of miles up and down a canyon. It's not something I think I would rather do. I'd rather wake up and just drink my coffee and have a good morning. But no, to go out there and accomplish something that's hard to do, that's where the win comes from. That's where the sense of fulfillment comes from. And in nonprofit or even for-profit world, when you set your sights on a goal, on an achievement, it should be a hard thing to accomplish, because if it's easy, then it won't be near as satisfying. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. And look, I'm going to share a personal story about myself before I ask you my next question, because I want to ask you about creating your own individual identity through adversity. And I'll use myself as an example as I set up this question. So, look, I was born with cerebral palsy, and I found out at the age of 9 that I wouldn't be able to walk for the duration of my life without assistance because of my cerebral palsy. And when I graduated college at 22, I went on 10 consecutive job interviews to become a sports reporter, and nobody would hire me because of the severity of my disability. They told me that they didn't have enough resources to support me in the newsroom. So what I did out of college is I spent 4 straight years as a volunteer reporter before I got my first paying job 6 years out of college. And ironically, it was advocating on behalf of the government and for them to hire more people with disabilities. So with that as a backdrop, Luke, I'm curious to get your perspective on creating identity from a personal perspective through adversity. What are your thoughts there, my friend?
Oh, I think that's where you can build some of the greatest character ever. I look at people that have ailments that are more of a challenge to deal with, like yourself, cerebral palsy. I mean, I don't have to deal with that. I've got my own issues and my own challenges that are different than yours, which is a beautiful thing because it creates who we are, and who we are is who we're supposed to be. I think half of life, be honest with you, bud, is just trying to find out who we are and being accepting of ourselves. Because when you finally accept who you are, then you're almost untouchable in a way that now you can focus in on what's beautiful about yourself and how that can make life beautiful for everybody else. I realize, listen, I'm not the smartest guy in the world. I'm not, super business savvy, at least more than others. But I think the talents that I have that I enjoy and have come to realize I'm successful at is I love talking to people and I love sharing stories that might inspire them, that certainly have inspired me to do and make a difference in this world. And I'm just grateful that I found that passion and I found something that I'm passionate about that I can share with others, like I'm sharing with you. And your skills, your challenges have developed skills in you that have made you successful. That otherwise, had you not had those challenges, you might not have developed those skills. So I think it's beautiful that we all have different challenges. We all accept those challenges because they create who we are, our character, our successes, certainly our failures as well. But that's life. That's who we are, and we can all enjoy that. At the end of the day, when this game is over, we get to look back and think and see all the fumbles we had, all the touchdowns we had, and they're all going to come to meaning in our life, and we can look at those as either hindrance or successes and things that have made us who we are.
Yeah, absolutely. And look, I'm curious to ask you about, the importance of career growth through organizations because our friends over at LinkedIn reported last year that 84% of employees feel that leadership development is a crucial component to their career advancement. And our friends at the Learning Institute and Association also reported last year, buddy, that they believe that 58% of employees would stay longer if their company invested in growth and leadership development. So I'm curious to get your thoughts on those findings and how important you believe leadership development is to overall organizational growth. What are your thoughts there, my friend?
Oh, I think that is a human trait. We all, from the beginning of time, right? We've all looked for leadership. We've looked for things that we and people and examples that we can follow. I mean, that's just human nature. And of course, those that have the ability, the true ability to lead are always and constantly trying to develop other leaders. They're sharing what they've found. They're expressing and teaching others how to inspire and how to motivate people. Unfortunately, there are those out there that look at motivation strictly as a dollar figure. They associate success in life based on how much money they make or how many clients they land. And don't get me wrong, that's all important and that's all, and there are successes that you can measure from that. But true success in life, in my opinion, comes from your ability to connect with other people and your ability to be inspired, which is just as important as inspiring others. Sometimes you lead and sometimes you follow, and both those situations, one's not better than the other, because at some point in life we're gonna follow someone, we're gonna look to someone else's leadership, and in some point in life, people are gonna look to us for leadership and strength. And I think one thing I've learned in the last 10 12 years of this crazy journey called Sleep in Heavenly Peace that I've been on is, it's okay. And not only okay, it's actually extremely beneficial to learn to follow and accept other people's points of view that's different than your own. Because yeah, it's okay to disagree, but you might find and understand and be provided a perspective of someone else, someone else's perspective that will benefit your life and improve your life. And so, leadership and these companies that understand that and the growing generation that we have. Our kids are concerned about the companies that hire them. What is that company's intentions? What is their corporate social responsibility, and how are they, focused in on improving the world, not just making a good product? And so I think that's great that we live in that day and age where that is important to our youth. It is important that these corporations invest in their employees on trying to make them a better person. Everybody's worried about their own brand nowadays, and that's great. It can be not great, but for the most part, I think people worrying about your brand, you're really worrying about how you can improve yourself, and and as long as you take a little bit of time out of your day to see how you can improve others, I think that's all beneficial.
Yeah, absolutely. And look, one of the reasons I wanted to start this podcast 5 years ago is because I wanted a platform that helped us sort of heal our societal divisions. And I believe that you said that passion and purpose is the foundation for sort of creating a common good so that we can live in a better place, my friend. So, how do you think passion and purpose can help heal the divisions that we see today in society? What are your thoughts there, my friend?
Oh, I love that question, and you're right. You know, when you find your passion and then you start following it because now it's a purpose, you are so much happier. There's too many. I think most of the community, most of people nowadays have not found their true passion, right? They go to work every day, they work and spend so much energy trying to find their passion or making something that's not their passion become their passion. It makes for a tough day. But when you find someone that has found their true passion and is following it and is true to themselves, they're far more happy, and they're more tolerant and accepting of other people because you found your passion, and then you talk to someone that's found their passion, and you understand, look, my passion's different than yours. And not only is that good, that's needed in our world. We have to have different passions, or else we all follow the same passion, and we're just going to be spinning our wheels, right? So when you find someone that's maybe more creative, or someone that's more, I don't know, vocal, or someone that's more, keeps them to themselves, or enjoys different things than you, that should be celebrated, because our growth comes from knowledge. And you're not going to gain much knowledge if all you do is know and accept only what you see and only the perspective that you see it in. When you actually get enough emotional maturity, which is something that I strive for every day, right? The more emotional maturity you have, the more you can now look at other people's points of view that may be far different than your own, and you can appreciate where that point of view and their point of view, where it comes from, which might be their passion, and it might not be yours, but you can certainly appreciate it, and that brings a lot of unity and a lot of bonding. Otherwise, it can develop into resentment and negative competition, and oftentimes the landscape that our world seems to be in right now, where it's you either agree with me and be a good guy, or don't agree with me, and that instantly makes you a competitor and a bad guy, which is not a good point of view.
Yeah, absolutely. And, well, since you brought it up, I'm curious to ask a follow up question about emotional maturity. And how do you think that concept has really evolved over time? What are your thoughts there?
Ooh, you know, it's a tough challenge, to be able to. I think emotional maturity is achieved more and more when you start accepting who you are. Now, that's always a tricky thing. I can hear people say, well, you can't accept the negative things about you. And of course, you want to always improve, right? You always want to try to improve yourself and do better. But I mean, I realized a lot of things about my character that I fought for so many years. And had I just got to the point where I'm okay with myself, I'm okay with my mistakes, I'm okay with my successes. I think that's true emotional maturity. And when you realize that about yourself, you start seeing that in other people. And if they realize that about themselves, then you're on a common ground of I've accepted you and you've accepted me. And I look at Sleep in Heavenly Peace, the charity I started. We have people from all walks of life, religious, certainly, absolutely, non-religious, atheists. We have those too. We have people that are Democrats. We have people that are Republicans. We have people that are hunters. We have people that are not hunters. We have this wide range of people that their focus isn't that. Their focus is their passion, which is helping kids get beds. That's what we focus in on. And when you not avoid, I don't want to say you avoid these different points of view. No, you can appreciate that. You become friends because you have a common goal and a common purpose. And when you finally reach that point of emotional maturity where you can look at someone else that may have a completely different view or religious or political view than you, it's okay that they do. And you respect one another for their points of view. You don't have to agree with them, but you can learn to respect them. And I think emotional maturity brings that.
Yeah, and I promise I'm going to ask you about sleep and heavenly peace in a little bit. But I wanted to also ask you about the whole idea, because I know that you believe that passion and purpose are the two most important concepts that we can ever value in our lives. And how, in preparation for this, Luke, I watched your TED Talk, and you talked about passion and purpose being the two most important concepts that we can ever value in life, my friend. So tell me why you believe that and what you want people to know, my friend.
Well, because I think when you find your passion, you're finally true to yourself. And that really is the underlying principle, the underlying lesson is when you can finally be true to yourself, honest with yourself. That's probably the hardest thing in life, in my opinion, is truly just being honest with yourself. Because when you finally are, and I think we're all working towards that, but when you finally can be honest with yourself, right, and accept your challenges and accept your successes, then other people, when they bring that to your attention, maybe you did something wrong, or maybe you do this or you do that, you're not defensive about it. You accept it and you know that. And that's just a far better person to be around. Your passion and your purpose in life, when you find it, you become more true to yourself. And when you become true to yourself, you can be true to others, and other people express the same. I always say, look, if you want happiness in your life, you have to express it, right? Because what you express, that's what comes back to you. So if you're, not happy in your life, you're miserable, you're upset, you're depressed, that's what's going to come back to you. And I think life does that to us. You attract what you express, I guess is what I'm saying. So when you find passion and you find purpose and you start expressing that passion and purpose, you're expressing your inner joy of life. That's what's going to be returned to you. And you're going to find people do the same thing to you. I've met amazing people and heard their amazing stories, and you're just so happy for them, and they're happy for you because they found their passion, you found your passion, and you're both following it.
Yeah, absolutely. And Luke, I've got another question about organizational culture and establishing a thriving one, my friend, because I used to be the lead job developer here for the YMCA in Windsor, and I used to work on a project for the Ontario Chamber of Commerce getting people with disabilities employed. And now I speak to organizations about the importance of hiring folks with disabilities. And, one of the things that I tell leaders all the time is don't put that you're an equal opportunity employer at the end of a job description if you're not going to implement the policy, right? So
Right.
I'm curious to ask you about how equal opportunity for folks with disabilities can help create a competitive edge for organizations and really uh, give them that competitive edge over their competitors. What are your thoughts there, my friend?
Oh, I'm not sure I have a really good opinion on that. It's an area I don't dive into or think about, or I shouldn't say think about, but don't experience much. I just think it's very important. Look, every company, let's be real, every company is in existence, especially a for-profit company, almost for one purpose, start out with, and that's to make money, right? And so when a for-profit company starts, their focus is to make money. So they look for the best talent that they can to do that, right? Unfortunately, there probably are some disabilities that people have that would inhibit that company from making their full goal, which is to make money, right? Now, with that being said, there are certainly aspects of organizations that money is not the main focus, right? HR departments are created to make sure that the focus is if it is money, it's not illegal, it's not infringing on people's rights, and so it's important that we have those departments that help our organizations, our companies, to stay true to humanity, if you will. And I think people with disabilities can offer so much different a different perspective than people that don't have that disability. I mean, I'm sure with your disability, there are abilities that you have developed that I won't appreciate or couldn't appreciate, and to have that exist in organizations, I think is very important. You can't sell a product to everybody if you don't have everybody's perspectives on it, I guess. And so, it might not be a very good answer, but I will say I think it's important that every company take a look at their employees and take a look at the perspectives of their employees, and not just disabilities. I mean, this goes into race, and it goes into all sorts of other aspects of life that when you grow up. Look at me. I'm from a small town in Idaho. I don't have the same perspective of someone that grew up in the city of New York. It's just a different perspective, and both of them can be very beneficial to an organization and the company in their goal of not just making more money, but making a product that's beneficial. And in the nonprofit world, our success or our goals are different. It's not necessarily to make money, but it's to accomplish our mission. And we need other people's perspectives to be able to understand completely the whole pie of how to accomplish that in a successful way.
Yeah, absolutely. And now, Luke, I'm going to keep my promise and ask you about sleep in heavenly peace, my friend. And I know that it initially started based on or contributed to a story that you brought up in your TED Talk. And I'm wondering if you can tell me about Haley's story and how that impacted you and motivated you, at least in part, to start the charity that you run today, my friend. What are your thoughts then?
Well, so yes, thank you for asking. So in 2012, basically, I ran across a pandemic in our country, in both of our countries, in the world rather, called child bedlessness, where kids do not have beds. It is a major problem. One that I've spent now my entire life and passion helping people realize that this is an issue. And Haley, a 6 year old girl who had never slept on a bed before, she only knew the backseat of her mom's car. This is the circumstances that I stumbled upon. And when I met Haley, who was just coming out of homelessness, her mom and her just got a house. When I first met her, they didn't have anything in the house. They had no possessions. And Haley was sleeping on her school clothes in the corner of a bedroom. That was where she slept. And and when I saw that for the first time, and I saw her reaction when we finally brought her a bed, it was just overwhelming. I wanted every kid to have that reaction. I wanted every kid to enjoy the comfort of their own bed and the impact that a good night's sleep and the social and physical benefits that come from having your own bed. I wanted every kid to have that. And I wanted every parent that was struggling to provide a bed for their kids, right? They're working on shelter, food, and clothing. Those are the three big ones that they're probably focused on. Beds is just a luxury. I didn't want that to be a luxury anymore, and it's something that I could do about it. And come to find out, it's something that a lot of people realized that they can do about it in their own hometown. And that's why Sleep in Emily Peace, yeah, it started in my garage and the story with Haley and meeting Haley for the first time. But there are millions of Haleys out there, and there are millions of Lukes out there that want to help. And we have provided a platform in Canada, in United States, in other countries where people can start a chapter of Sleep in Heavenly Peace and that they can build beds for kids in their own communities.
Yeah, and you've certainly grown it into a global movement. I know that Sleep in Heavenly Peace today has more than 400 chapters in more than 47 states and four countries, my friend, delivering over 350,000 beds to children in need, my friend. So I wonder your thoughts on, the opportunities that you've had to mentor people through this charity and just the overall growth of the movement itself, my friend. What are your thoughts there?
Well, I have met some of the most amazing people. I mean, these men and women, some of them are retired, some of them have full-time jobs and young kids, and they still take the time out of their day, week, month, year to build beds, raise money, build beds, deliver beds to kids that don't have them. And these are, like I said before, they're all different walks of life. You have lawyers and janitors and salesmen and secretaries, and I mean all sorts of people that have. It doesn't matter what they did. It doesn't matter what they believe. They have come to Sleep in Heavenly Peace because the thought of a child sleeping on the floor was too much for them, and they know that they can do something about it. So it has inspired them to do that, to jump in and actually make a difference in not just the kids' lives and not just the families' lives, but actually the lives of their own. And I didn't expect this, to be honest with you. When I started Sleep in Heavenly Peace, I thought we were just building beds for kids and that's it. But actually, I've heard thousands of stories of how it's helped people's marriages and brought families together and brought kids closer to their parents. And the byproduct of helping someone else out, you'll find actually helps yourself out more than anything. And it kind of goes back to that emotional maturity, right? It helps us understand the perspective of others, which allows us to be a little bit more tolerant. Ask questions. Be curious and not judgmental, as the saying goes. And I see that every day. And to be able to work in that environment and work with these men and women every day, it's just a blessing I never knew existed.
Yeah, absolutely. And look, I want to talk to you about purpose-driven leadership and your definition of what that concept means, because I know that you've helped hundreds of people sort of lead their lives with heart and purpose, my friend. So under that context, what do you think purpose-driven leadership means to you?
Well, there's leadership, and then there's leadership behind someone that has a purpose and a passion. And it just it's just easier to follow. I think when you see someone that's passionate and you hear them speak about their passion and their purpose, it's easier to follow because you want that. I think people crave this this fulfillment that comes when you are true to yourself and you're true to your passion and purpose. People want that, and you express a happiness that you otherwise would not know. I know for a fact that I didn't have a bad life before Sleep in Heavenly Peace. It wasn't. I mean, on paper, it was great, but I knew there was more that I could offer. I knew that there was more that was within me that I could share with the world. And when I found that, and I don't think it was dumb luck that child bedlessness landed in my lap. It was the passion that I was searching for, and because of that, now I couldn't stop. I couldn't let it go. I couldn't focus in on anything else. And I'd like to think because of that, now we're the largest bed building charity in the world, and we grow exponentially every year, and it's just a blessing to know that you can be a leader, but if you find your true passion, what's true to you, you'll be a far more effective leader.
Yeah, absolutely. And look, I'm also so curious to circle back just for a moment on LinkedIn's findings from last year, because I also reported that when it comes to mentoring and leading millennials, that millennials today in America, my friend, believe that they're suffering from a leadership gap from those that are in charge of leading them and sort of showing them the way at a clip of about 63%, my friend,
Mm.
believe that they don't have enough leadership training to succeed professionally, my friend. So I'm wondering your thoughts on the responsibility that you and I and the older generation has to close that millennial leadership gap. What are your thoughts there?
Oh, that's funny you bring that up because connecting with millennials nowadays and whatever the generation they call now is going on, to connect with those people with the perspective that we had growing up and what we were taught growing up is a difficult thing. We these what's beautiful about these millennials, as much as we kid around about their work ethic and all that, really these kids are more concerned about wanting to make a positive difference in the lives in the world, really, and the company that they're hired by, to making sure that that company also has a much more focus on making a difference in the world. We didn't have that. Corporate social responsibility was not even a phrase that was uttered when I grew up in business. And now I've talked to many organizations that are now focusing heavily on corporate social responsibility and how they're giving back to the community, because if they don't, they're losing all of these millennials. And I think these millennials, they look at leaders that are older, that are from the older generation, who don't have that same perspective. What was important to the organizations 20, 30 years ago was, hey, we need to make money, we need to be efficient, we need to do all this stuff, and corporate social responsibility wasn't even talked about. Well, now that's a big ticket item, and some of these leaders that grew up not having that as an example, or a lesson that they learned, it's hard for them to connect. So I'm not surprised that there's that big of a gap. I'm not surprised that millennials feel that way. Now, what I will say about millennials is they need to take a little more time to realize the benefits that generation did come across and did learn from. But I think it is our responsibility as leaders, as trying to develop. I'm a football coach, right? So, teaching football to kids nowadays is far different than it was when I was learning football. And you can fight that, and you can go against that, or you can learn how to adapt and learn how to communicate with these kids and reach them, and which will inspire them to do better and do good. And I can't help but we are slowly improving as a society overall, right? Now, yeah, you have examples of hardship here and there, but I think those gaps are getting further and farther between. I think there's more good in the world than bad.
Mhm.
You hear about the good more than the bad, but I think it comes from people that are evolving and people that are understanding that it is important that we train and we teach people more than just what we have learned, and understand that there's different perspectives and lessons in life other than what we had learned. And I think the millennials are struggling with that. And you millennials out there, you might be struggling with that, but guess what? Old guys like me, we struggle with how to connect with you. And so I think if we can all get in a room and just talk it out and realize that, we have different lessons that we've learned, but there's value in both lifestyles.
Yeah, absolutely. And, I know that you're a person that believes in the power of tiny moments and the amount of joy that comes from a tiny moment and the amount of impact that we can have. So, talk to me about the importance of embracing the power of tiny moment and why you believe that it can turn into a global impact of difference, my friend. What are your thoughts there?
Well, I love this podcast, and it's taken a route different than any other podcast I've ever been on, by the way, my friend Kevin. This is great because it really does focus. We've really focused a lot on finding your passion. And you're not going to find your passion if you don't answer one or two of these tiny moments that we all do that. And too often we dismiss these tiny moments. We're too busy, or we don't know how to do that, or someone else is doing that, and we dismiss them away, and we end up not doing anything. And if you do that, you never know. You might just, I don't think might, you will. I think you will miss out on an opportunity to maybe find what you're truly passionate about. I often think, what would it be like had I not taken that tiny moment that popped in my head when I'm sitting on the couch with my kids, thinking, you know what? I should just get off the couch right now. I should go in my garage. I should build another bed. I should take my kids with me and make a difference. Had I not followed that, I hate to think that there might be 350 plus thousand kids, and hundreds of thousands of volunteers that would not have otherwise met and not had otherwise built beds for kids.
Yeah, absolutely. And Luke, just before I ask you my last question, I'm also curious to ask you about how do you think the modern definition of being an elite father has changed? Because
Mm.
there are a lot of pressures put on kids today, and I know as a dad, you'll agree with the statement that being a dad is the most important job you'll ever have, my friend. So, how do you think modern fatherhood has changed over time? What are your thoughts there, my friend?
Oh, wow. Man, you asked some good ones, Kevin. I'll tell you that, brother. Being a father, it's probably the hardest thing I've ever done, because you know why? I've never been one before. I don't know what it's like. Now, granted, I didn't grow up with a dad either. All my dads were a bunch of football coaches and inspiring leaders that I looked up to. So I had a bunch of dads, and I like to think I took bits and pieces of what made them special and try to implement those. But me as a father, I mean, I look back and I tell people, I think sometimes I got it right and sometimes I got it wrong. I didn't get the textbook, or I missed the memo on how to be a good dad. But I will say, recognizing that these kids, they face a much different challenge. In some cases easier, in a lot of cases very much harder than the challenges we faced when we were kids. And my heart goes out to every dad out there right now, because we don't have the playbook on how to do this right. And when we're facing challenges that our kids are facing that we didn't have to face when we were that kid. So we don't know how to react. We don't know the full outcome of what some of these decisions are going to be like, we know that the possibilities, you know, I, I think the best advice that I would give dads nowadays is just be there and show up, you know, and know that you're not going to get it right, and know that not every time, anyways, and that's okay, you know. I think the most important thing is just letting your kids know that you love them and you're there for them. Now, you don't want to take away hardship from your kids because that's what made them who you are, right? And that's going to make them who they are, and prepare them for the world. But when they do fall on hard times, and they do run into those tough situations, a good dad doesn't solve it for them. A good dad supports them through it, and I think that's most important.
Yeah, absolutely. And Luke, my final question for you this afternoon has to do with legacy because there's this sign in my office that says that, when it comes to legacy, it's important that we all put our fingerprints of difference into the sand, my friend. So when it comes to your own personal and professional legacy, my friend, how do you want that to be defined, my friend?
Mm. Oh, I just hope when I pass on from this life, I just want people to think that, and look back at me and think, that's a guy that did his best. I make mistakes. I've made some doozies like everybody else, but I just want people to think, when they think of Luke Mickelson, they think of a guy that really tried his hardest to think of others, to do things for other people, and try to make the world a better place. Look, I didn't start this out to change the world. I started this out to change the life of one family and one child. The byproduct of that has been beautiful, and I'm super grateful for it. But when it comes right down to it, you know, we all live this life with good intentions. We all live this life hoping for the best, and realizing that we will always fall short of perfection. We will always fall short of what we hope is going to happen. But that's life. That's okay. Let's accept our failures. Let's accept who we are. And I just hope when I die, people look back at me and think, you know what, he did his best, right? Tried his hardest, and what came of it is what came of it. And I hope people look at it as good.
Yeah, absolutely. And Luke, tell me if people want to get connected with you or Sleep or Heavenly Peace, what's the best way they can do that, my friend?
Absolutely. So if you want to learn more about Sleep and Emily, please visit our website, shpbeds.org. There you'll learn all about where this started. You'll learn our main focus is to help kids get beds that need them. You can donate, you can start a chapter, you can be involved in a local chapter, whatever you want to do. The biggest thing I'd ask your audience to do, Kevin, is when you're done listening to this podcast, please share it with other people. We have to let people know about child bedlessness, or else it continues to stay unknown and uncovered. We still only cover about 27% of the United States, and even less in Canada. And that is not going to change unless we have people like yourselves out opening up your mouth, sharing what you hear, exploring and investigating this pandemic called child bedlessness. And then if it does tug at your heartstrings and it's something that you would like to be a part of, please reach out to your local chapter, reach out to us, go to shpbeds.org and learn how you can be involved.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Luke, I want to thank you for your commitment to both ending childhood bedlessness and for your commitment to public service and impact, my friend, and for engaging in conversation with me this afternoon. It's most appreciated.
Well, my pleasure. Thanks for having me, bud.